I'm 78 years old, and I just spent Thanksgiving alone for the first time in 56 years. Not because I don't have family. I have 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. They're all alive. They're all healthy. They just didn't invite me. And here's the part that should horrify you. I don't blame them. Because when they asked me what I wanted to do for the holiday, I said what I've said for 56 years. Whatever you all want, I'm happy with whatever makes you happy. My daughter Sarah looked at me across that coffee shop table and said something that's been echoing in my head for 3 months now. She said, "Mom, we don't know what you want because you've never told us. We don't actually know who you are." I'm 78 years old, and I just realized I don't know who I am either. Let me take you back. Because this didn't happen overnight. This happened across decades of small choices that felt right at the time. I was 22 years old when I married Richard. It was 1968. I was going to be a teacher. I'd just finished my degree in English literature. I loved Steinbeck. I loved Fitzgerald. I had opinions about everything from the Vietnam War to whether split infinitives were acceptable in formal writing. But Richard had strong opinions too. And here's what I told myself. A good wife supports her husband. When he said he didn't like my friends from college because they were too political, I stopped seeing them. When he said he preferred I dress more conservatively, I packed away the mini skirts I loved. When his mother criticized my pot roast, I learned to make it her way. I called it compromise. I called it love. I called it being a good partner. I was becoming someone else, one small decision at a time. But I couldn't see it, because every change felt reasonable. Every adjustment felt like what you do when you love someone. By the time I was 30, I couldn't tell you what my favorite color was. Richard liked blue. So our house was blue. Our car was blue. I wore blue. What do you think? He'd ask about anything. Where to go on vacation, what restaurant to choose, which movie to see. I'm fine with whatever you want, I'd say. And I meant it. Because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped having wants of my own. Then the children came. Michael in 1973, Sarah in 1975, Jennifer in 1978. And you know what I told myself? Now I had purpose. Now I was needed. A mother is supposed to sacrifice. A mother puts her children first. So I did. When Michael wanted to play soccer, I became a soccer mom. When Sarah wanted to do ballet, I became a ballet mom. When Jennifer got into horses, I became a horse mom. I drove carpools. I organized fundraisers. I volunteered for everything. People would ask me, "What do you like to do?" I love watching my kids discover their passions, I'd say. But that wasn't an answer to the question, was it? I was 43 years old when I went to a parent-teacher conference for Jennifer. Her English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, asked me what books I'd been reading. I froze. I hadn't read a book for myself in 15 years, not one. I'd read to the kids, hundreds of children's books, young adult novels, whatever they needed for school, but nothing for me. "I don't have much time for reading," I said. Mrs. Patterson smiled kindly. "You should make time. It's important to model having your own interests." I nodded. I smiled. I didn't make time. Because here's what I told myself. There would be time later, when the kids were older, when they needed me less. Then I'd figure out what I wanted. Then I'd rediscover myself. So I waited. When the kids were in high school, Richard got a big promotion. More money, but longer hours. He was stressed. He needed support, So I became his stress manager. I kept the house quiet when he was home. I handled everything so he didn't have to worry. I learned which clients he liked, which he didn't, what politics he cared about at work. "You're such a supportive wife," his colleagues would say at company parties. I glowed at the praise. See? I was good at this. Being what other people needed, that was my skill. When Michael went to college in 1991, people asked me what I was going to do with all the free time. "Focus on the girls," I said. "They still need me." When Sarah left in 93, they asked again. "Jennifer's got 2 more years, and Richard's been working so hard. I want to be there for them." When Jennifer left for college in 1996, I was 50 years old. "Now's your time," my neighbor Barbara said. "What are you going to do for yourself?" I looked at her like she was speaking another language. Do for myself? What did that even mean? I tried. I really did. I signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. Went to the first session. The instructor asked us to paint something we loved. I sat there for 45 minutes staring at a blank page. I couldn't think of anything. Not one thing that was mine to love. I never went back to that class. Instead, I called the kids more. I visited more. When Michael got engaged in 1998, I threw myself into wedding planning. When Sarah started having babies, I became the grandmother who was always available, always ready, always willing. "Don't you have your own life?" Sarah asked me once when I offered to babysit for the 4th weekend in a row. "You are my life," I told her. She looked uncomfortable, but she didn't push it. Richard retired when I was 63. Finally, we had time together. Time to travel, to do all the things we'd always talked about. "Where do you want to go?" he asked me. "Wherever you want," I said. "No," he said, and there was something sharp in his voice. "Where do you want to go?" I couldn't answer. We sat in silence in our living room, the blue living room, and I realized something terrifying. After 41 years of marriage, my husband didn't know me, because there was nothing to know. I'd spent 4 decades being a mirror, reflecting back whatever the people around me needed to see, but there was nothing behind the glass. Richard died 3 years ago. Heart attack, quick. He was here one Tuesday morning having his coffee, and then he wasn't. And I didn't know what to do. Not just with the logistics, the funeral, the estate, the house. I figured that out. But with myself. For 53 years since the day I married him, I'd been Richard's wife. That was my identity. That was who I was. Now what was I? The kids rallied around me at first. They called every day, visited every week, made sure I was okay. "What can we do for you, Mom?" they kept asking. And I kept saying, "Nothing, honey. I'm fine. Tell me about you." Because that's what I knew how to do. Ask about them. Listen to them. Be interested in them. A year after Richard died, Michael sat me down. "Mom," he said, "I need you to listen to me. Really listen. You can't keep living through us." "I'm not," I started. "You are," he said. "Every conversation we have is about us. Our jobs, our kids, our problems. You never talk about yourself. You never tell us what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you want." "I want to hear about your lives," I said. "But what about your life?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. That's when things started to change. Not with me, I didn't change, but with them. The calls got less frequent. The visits spread further apart. Not because they loved me less, I don't think, but because, as Sarah explained it later, talking to me felt like talking to a void. "You just absorb everything we say and give nothing back," she told me. "It's exhausting, Mom. It's like you're not even a real person. You're just there, listening, agreeing, supporting, but there's no you in any of it. I was 75 years old when I heard that. 75. And I finally understood what I'd done. I'd disappeared myself, slowly, carefully, over decades. I'd sanded down every edge, every opinion, every preference, every desire, until there was nothing left but smooth emptiness. I thought I was being selfless. I thought I was being loving. I thought I was being a good wife, a good mother, a good grandmother. But what I actually did was rob my family of knowing me, the real me, because there was no real me anymore. That Thanksgiving conversation happened 3 months ago. We were planning the holiday, and my kids were arguing about where to have it, whose house, what to cook. They turned to me to settle it. "What do you think, Mom?" And I said what I always said. "Whatever you all want. I'm happy with whatever makes you happy." That's when Sarah said it. "Mom, we don't know what you want because you've never told us. We don't actually know who you are." And Jennifer added quietly, "Sometimes it feels like you're not even really there. You're just a space that agrees with whatever we say." Michael didn't say anything. He just looked sad. "So we think," Sarah continued, "that you should do Thanksgiving on your own this year. Figure out what you actually want to do, not what we want, what you want." I sat in my blue living room on Thanksgiving, 78 years old, completely alone, and I realized something. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what kind of food I actually liked. I'd been cooking what Richard liked, what the kids liked, for so long that I couldn't remember what I enjoyed eating. I didn't know what music I wanted to listen to. I'd been playing what other people wanted for decades. I didn't know how I wanted to spend the day. Every holiday for 56 years had been spent making everyone else happy. I sat there for 3 hours, just sat, in the silence, in the empty house. And then I did something I hadn't done in over 50 years. I asked myself what I wanted, not what anyone else wanted, not what I should want, not what would make someone else happy. What did I, Margaret Ann Collins, want? The answer came slowly, like remembering something from a dream. I wanted to read. I wanted to read the books I'd loved when I was 22. I wanted to remember what I'd thought about them, what I'd felt. So I went to the bookstore the next day. Black Friday. The place was packed, and I stood in front of the literature section and I cried, because there they were. Steinbeck, Fitzgerald, Hemingway, Woolf, all the authors I'd loved before I became someone else. I bought 7 books. Spent $140. Richard would have said it was too much. I would have agreed with him, but Richard wasn't there, and I didn't agree with him anymore. I read The Grapes of Wrath over the next week, and something happened that I didn't expect. I had opinions, strong opinions, about the characters, about the themes, about Steinbeck's choices, opinions that were mine. That came from somewhere inside me that I thought had died. I called Sarah. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Okay," she said, cautious. "I read The Grapes of Wrath this week, and I think it's better than I remembered. The way Steinbeck shows how systems crush individuals, it's relevant today, maybe more relevant than it was in the 30s. Silence on the other end. "Mom," Sarah finally said, "are you okay?" "I'm starting to be," I said. "That was 3 months ago. Here's what I've learned since then. I like purple, not blue, purple, deep, rich purple. I bought purple curtains for the living room. The room isn't blue anymore. I like jazz, specifically John Coltrane and Miles Davis. Richard hated jazz. said it was just noise, but it's not noise to me. It's complex and beautiful and challenging. I like spicy food, really spicy. I've been cooking with cayenne and jalapenos and curry, foods I never made because Richard had a sensitive stomach. I like hiking. I joined a hiking group for seniors. We go out twice a week. Last week we did a 5-mile trail, and I kept up with everyone. I felt strong. I felt alive. I like having opinions about politics, about books, about movies, about everything. Some people don't like my opinions. That's okay. They're still mine. But here's the hard part, the part I need you to understand. I'm 78 years old. I have maybe 10 years left if I'm lucky, maybe 15 if I'm really lucky. I lost 56 years. 56 years of being a person, of having a self, of knowing who I was. My kids are trying now. Since I started changing, they're trying to get to know me. We had coffee last week, all 4 of us. And I told them about the book I'm reading, the hike I took, the jazz concert I went to. They listened, they asked questions, they seemed interested, maybe even surprised. I like this, Jennifer said. I like getting to know you. I wish we'd known you all along, Michael said. And that broke my heart, because they could have, if I'd let them. So here's what I need to tell you, what I need you to hear. You are not doing anyone a favor by disappearing yourself. You think you're being selfless. You think you're being loving. You think you're being a good partner, a good parent, a good friend. But what you're actually doing is robbing the people around you of knowing you, really knowing you. Your children don't need a mirror. They need a person, a full, complex, opinionated, flawed, interesting person. Your partner doesn't need someone who just agrees with everything they say. They need an equal, someone who challenges them, someone who brings their own perspective. Your friends don't need a yes man. They need a friend, someone with their own life, their own interests, their own stories. When you lose yourself in other people, you think you're giving them everything. But what you're actually giving them is nothing, because there's no you in it. I know what you're thinking. I thought it too. But I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to prioritize myself over the people I love. Here's the truth. Having a self isn't selfish. Having opinions isn't selfish. Having preferences and interests and desires, that's not selfish. That's being a person. And the people who love you want to love a person, not an echo, not a mirror, not a shadow. They want to love you, but they can't love you if you're not there. Maybe you're thinking, I'll figure out who I am later, when the kids are older, when my partner retires, when I have more time. That's what I thought. For 50 years, that's what I thought. And now I'm 78, and later is now, except now is almost over. You don't have as much time as you think you do. None of us do. Start now, today, this minute. Ask yourself, what do I want? Not what does my partner want? Not what do my kids need? Not what does my boss expect? Not what do my parents think I should do? What do I want? And if you don't know the answer, and you might not because you've been ignoring that question for so long, then start exploring, start trying things, start paying attention to what makes you feel alive, what makes you interested, what makes you angry, what makes you passionate. Read books, take classes, join groups, have opinions, disagree with people, express preferences. Say, I want instead of whatever you want. Say, I think instead of what do you think. Say, I prefer instead of I don't care. Will people be uncomfortable? Maybe. Probably. People get used to you being a certain way. When you change, it disrupts things. My kids were uncomfortable at first. They didn't know how to talk to me when I started having opinions. When I started saying what I wanted instead of asking what they wanted. But you know what? They adjusted. And our relationships are better now. Harder maybe, more complicated, but better, more real. Because now they're having relationships with me, not with an empty space shaped like their mother. If you have children, listen to me. The greatest gift you can give them isn't your sacrifice, it's your example. Show them that you're a person, that you have interests and passions and opinions, that you take up space in the world. Because if you don't, you're teaching them that it's okay to disappear, that love means erasing yourself, that being a parent means ceasing to be a person. Is that what you want them to learn? If you have a partner, understand this. They fell in love with a person. Maybe they've forgotten that person. Maybe you've forgotten that person. But that person is still in there. And your relationship will be stronger, not weaker, when you start being a person again, when you bring yourself to the table instead of just reflecting them back to themselves. I spent 56 years trying to be everything to everyone, and I ended up being nothing to anyone, including myself. Don't do what I did. Don't wait until everyone leaves to figure out who you are. Don't wait until you're 78 to start living. You think you're being noble by putting everyone else first. But there's nothing noble about self-erasure. There's nothing loving about disappearing. The people in your life don't need you to be perfect. They don't need you to be selfless. They don't need you to sacrifice who you are. They need you to be you. And you need to be you too. I'm 78 years old. I'm finally becoming myself. I'm reading books and having opinions and decorating my house the way I want it. I'm hiking and listening to jazz and eating spicy food. I'm becoming a person my kids can actually know, a person my grandchildren can have real relationships with, a person who exists beyond just supporting and agreeing and accommodating. But I lost 56 years, and I can't get them back. You still have time, but only if you start now. So here's my question for you. Who are you? Not who are you to other people, not what roles do you play, not what do other people need you to be. Who are you? If you can't answer that question, it's time to find out. Share this with someone who's lost themselves in taking care of everyone else. Share it with someone who says, I don't care when asked what they want. Share it with someone who's forgotten they're a person beyond their roles. And leave a comment telling me, what's one thing you want that you've been afraid to admit? What's one opinion you've been keeping quiet? What's one preference you've been ignoring? Because I want to know who you are. And more importantly, you need to know who you are. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait until everyone leaves to find yourself. Be yourself now, while there are still people around to know you. The choice is yours, but make it today, because tomorrow might be too late.